Good evening. I'm Sir Glenn Armamento, and again, welcome to our subject, STS, Science, Technology, and Society. Now, we're going to start with Chapter 1, the general concept and historical events in science, technology, and society. To start with, we have Lesson 1, the intellectual revolution that defined society. Okay? So, under this, we have our lesson objectives. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to, number one, discuss how the idea postulated by Copernicus, Darwin, and Freud contributed to the spark of scientific revolution. Number two, analyze how the scientific revolution is done in the various parts of the world, like Latin America, East Asia, Middle East, and Africa. But for today's slide, we're just going to concentrate on the first objective, which is discuss how the idea postulated by Copernicus, Darwin, and Freud contributed to the spark of scientific revolution. Okay, let us continue. So this lesson will give light to the development of science and scientific ideas in the heart of the society. It is the goal of this lesson to articulate ways by which society transformed by science and technology. Now, under scientific revolution, so science is as old as the world itself. There is no individual that can exactly identify when and where science began. From the genesis of time, science has existed. It has always interwoven with the society. So, how can we define science? So, according to our introduction under scientific revolution, science started way back where the world started. So, kung kailan nag-umpisa yung mundo natin, doon nag-umpisa yung science. So, there is no definite way to identify where the world started or began. So, there's no definite way also to identify where and when science started. So, we have listed four ways to define science. Number one is science as an idea. Number two is science as an intellectual activity. Number three is science as a body of knowledge. And number four, science as a personal activity. We're now going to discuss it one by one. Okay? Science as an idea. It includes ideas, theories, and all available systematic explanation and observations about the natural and physical world. So madami tayong mga theories and observations and conclusions on our physical world. So one way of defining science is by those theories, conclusions, and observations. Okay pa. Next, number two is a science as an intellectual activity. It encompasses a systematic and practical study of the natural and physical world. This process of study involves systematic observation and experimentation. Dito papasok yung scientific method. Not just like yung katulad nung sa number 1, which is just an observation. Here, in number 2, science as an intellectual study. So dito papasok yung pagiging systematize or systematic ng paraan ng pag-obserba at ng experimentation to define science. Okay? Next, number 3, science as a body of knowledge. It is a subject or a discipline. So a field of study or a body of knowledge that deals with the process of learning about the natural and physical world. This is what we refer to as school science. Ang tawag natin dito ay school science. Defining or number 3 on how can we define science. Science as a body of knowledge. So when we talk about school science or discipline, sa school kasi pag sinabi natin discipline or most likely if we are talking about subjects we can talk about subject we can refer to subject also by talking about by saying discipline. Okay. So, dito naman, ito yung mga tinatawag nating school science. We have astronomy, biology, chemistry, physics, geology, others. Lahat po ng subject or discipline ang tawag natin dyan. Discipline, ano po? So, papasok siya sa number 3, which is science as a body of knowledge. Lastly, we have number 4, science as personal and social activity. So, this explains that science is both knowledge and activities done by human being to develop better understanding of the world around them. It is a means to improve life and to survive in life. It is interwoven in people's lives. So, hindi na natin kailangang diskobrehin. Kasi yung pang number 4 natin is interwoven siya sa society, sa individual, as individuality, at sabihin natin, it is transferred from our ancestors to the present generation. So, science as a personal and social activity, ginagawa na natin siya pang araw-araw. Okay. Winemaking, sa paraan ng pag-preserve ng pagkain, for example, pagtitinapa, pagtutuyo, pickling, and others. So, personal and social activity na siya. Nagiging personal and social activity. That is the fourth way on how to define science. Okay. So, human beings have been involved in scientific activities in order to know and understand everything around them. So, tayo sa scientific activities, nag-engage tayo to scientific activities to know and understand everything around us. One thing that I know is that ang tao ay takot sa mga bagay na hindi nila naiintindihan. Okay? Paano yan? So, that is also how we can answer the question, why do we explore space? Okay? So the question, why do we explore space? The answer would be, kasi takot nga yung tao sa mga bagay-bagay na hindi niya naiintindihan. So we explore space to satisfy our craving of knowledge o kung ano yung nandun, ano yung pwede natin makuha doon, ano yung pwedeng pakinabangan doon. But that definitely leads to more questions. Okay, let us continue. They have persistently observed and studied the natural and physical world in order to find meanings and seek answer to many questions. Okay? They have developed novel ideas later known as philosophy. We also have what we call philosophy right now. Okay? Those are what we call novel ideas. Okay? To provide alternative or possible explanation to certain phenomena. Okay? And human also use religion to rationalize the origins of life and all lifeless forms. Okay. So, when we talk about this last two paragraph, so they have developed novel ideas later known as philosophy to provide alternative and possible explanation to certain phenomena. Humans also use religions to rationalize the origin of life and all lifeless forms on earth. So, kapag hindi natin makuha yung sagot sa tanong natin sa science, we definitely rely on other knowledge or other forms na pwede natin pagkuhaan ng knowledge or ng kasagutan. For example, religion. Okay. So, ang tao sa ngayon ay hati sa dalawang paniniwala. Okay, tungkol sa pinagmulan ng tao. The first one would be under scientific basis, evolution. And the second would be creation by religion. Okay, yun yung dalawa na pinagtatalunan until now. Ano po? So, kapag hindi kasi natin makuha yung sagot sa gusto natin, sa katanungan natin doon sa science, we rely on other such as religion to answer to satisfy our brain or the questions in our mind. So that is what usually happens in us. Okay, The idea of scientific revolution is claimed to have started in the earliest century. Ano pa? Idea of scientific revolution. Ito yun. Okay. What else? In Europe. Okay, the idea of scientific revolution is claimed to have started in the early 16th century up to the 18th century in Europe. So, why in Europe? Definitely, the answer would be the probable answer is the invention of printing machine and the blooming intellectual activities done in various places of learning and the growing number of scholars in various fields of human interest during the time in Europe. So that is why in Europe. Okay? So scientific revolution was a period of enlightenment when the development in the fields of mathematics, physics, astronomy, biology, and chemistry transforms the view of society about nature. So, tinawag natin scientific revolution was the period of enlightenment kasi lumabas na itong mga subject na ito. Scientific revolution was a golden age for people committed to scholarly life in science, but it was also deeply trying moment to some scientific individuals that lead to their painful death or condemnation from the religious institution who tried to preserve their faith, religion, and theological views. So, kung matatandaan natin, simulat sa pool, laging merong hidwaan or laging merong namamagitan na hidwaan between ideas on the scientific world or the scientific community and the church. So, hindi magkasundo yung idea nila. Doon pa lang sa pinagmulan, so may problema na tayo doon. Okay. So, laging merong So, how about pa yung mga tao, yung mga scholars natin during that time na nasa simbahan or may faith sa simbahan. But then again, they are also being condemned by the church because of what they believe in or what they have studies or experimented on. So, merong malaking problema doon sa mga bagay-bagay na yon. Okay? So, scientific revolution is very significant to the development of human beings, transformation of society, and information of scientific ideas. Yung scientific revolution na tinatawag natin, it's been significantly developed. It has a significant development on human beings. It transforms our society and the formations of scientific ideas in the current society. So, doon nag-umpisa yung mga pagbabago sa mga ideas na nauna nating pinaniwalaan. So then, the scientific revolution also leads to the creations of new research fields in science and prompted the establishment of strong foundation for modern science. So, scientific revolution din yung naging backbone ng strong foundation ng modern science po natin. Okay? In many ways, scientific revolution transforms the natural world and the world of ideas. Okay? So, let us continue. So this, we have figure 1, influences to scientific revolution. We have the, doon tayo mag-umpisa sa taas. We have the science ideas. Okay? Papunta sa humans yung science ideas and also papunta sa society. From humans to society, from society to humans. Okay? And then we have the scientific revolution at the center. This is a figure that explains the influences of scientific revolution. So I hope that you can describe what is in the picture. So gamitin natin yung makuli imahinasyon natin. Malikot na imahinasyon. Okay, let us continue with some intellectuals and their revolutionary ideas. Okay? So, To further understand what exactly happens during the scientific revolution, it is important to examine the different individuals whose ideas have shaken and contested the dominant theories and ideas during those period of time. So, also known as the truth during the time. Ano po? Scientists in all periods of time are driven by their curiosity, critical thinking, and creativity to explore the physical and the natural world. Their love for science is driven by their deep passion to know and to discover. So, this one actually, nabanggit ko na kanina yung tungkol dito. Ano po? So, to further understand exactly what happens during the scientific revolution, so, yung mga tao na nag-contest do sa dominant ideas during those times when church is one of the most powerful or the most powerful of the communities. Ano pa? So, later na lang nagkaroon ng tinatawag na separation between church and state. Pero dati, wala pa yan. So, there are some people who contested the ideas of the dominant theory, which is the church. Pinaniniwalaan ng mga unang panahon natin. First, I want to show you this figure, the figure 2, variables that influences the development of science ideas, science theories, and technology. So, meron tayong input dito sa left side, which is the creativity, curiosity, and the critical thinking. The process is for the scientists, the passion to know and the passion to discover. And the output will be the science ideas, the science discoveries, and also the technology. Ano pa? So, we have input as creativity, curiosity, critical thinking. So, kapag pumasok yan sa scientist, we have the passion to know and to discover. And the output would be science discoveries and technology. That is figure 2, variables that influence the development of science ideas, science discoveries, and technology. So, scientists are not driven by glamour for honor and publicity. Ano pa? They are ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Some scientists were never appreciated during these times. So some were sentenced to death while others were condemned by church during the time. In spite of all the predicaments and challenges they experience, they never stopped experimenting, theorizing, and discovering new knowledge and ideas. So, we have some persons such as Nicholas Copernicus here are going to be studied. Okay, so the first one who contested the dominant ideas during those times is Nicholas Copernicus. Ano pa? So one of the Renaissance man, particularly in the field of science, Nicholas Copernicus, knowledge about the nature of the universe has been essentially unchanged since the great days of ancient Greece. So some 1,500 years before Copernicus came to the scene, that is, according to Griffin, in 2003. This continued to the Renaissance period in one important way. While Copernicus resembled the Greek ancient philosopher or thinkers, he did not do anything extensive such as observing heavenly bodies or inviting people to test his ideas. His ideas were an example of what presently called as the thought experiment. Ano ba yung thought experiment? So by the time he finished his doctorate degree, Copernicus has been appointed as canon at Promborg Cathedral in Poland. Bakit kaya? Kasi according to my research, one of his uncle is mataas ang katungkulan sa church. So, si Nicholas Copernicus is a scientist who discovers, who studies, but then again, has a parang canon kasi is parang lawmaker kasi church. Tagagawa ng batas or ng rules sa church. Yan. So Copernicus was strongly influenced by the book entitled Epitome, published in 1496 by German author Johannes Molière. Okay? Then, he circulated the summary of his ideas to his few close friends in a manuscript called Commentariulus, or Little Commentary. Publication of his book, Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium, or in English, it is On the Revolution of the Heavenly Spheres in 1543, often cited as the start of scientific revolution. So, yun yung book niya, The Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium, often cited as the start of scientific revolution. So, in his book, he wanted a model of the universe which everything moved around a single centered at unvarying rate according to Given. Copernicus placed the sun on the centerpiece of the universe. That is what we called the heliocentric universe theory. Ano ba yung heliocentric universe theory ni Copernicus? Yung sun, yung nasa center ng universe. Okay? Tapos yung mga planets na yung sumunod. So, ngayon, nakikita natin, it is the sun at the center of the solar system but not the universe. Tapos may mga planets na sumunod, ano. So, the star cannot be placed in the fixed position. There are just some problem, ano. However, was the position of the stars. May problema on the position of the stars kasi the position of the stars cannot be placed in a fixed position like crystals in the distant sphere. So ngayon, according to science, nung una nating paniniwala is that the sun is not moving. Ngayon, the sun is moving but maliit na maliit in a span of long time. Okay. Copernicus is also a courageous man, although the Copernican model makes sense now. During those times, it was judged to be heretic and therefore it was an acceptable idea to be taught to Catholics. So the Catholic Church banned the Copernican model and was ignored by Rome for the rest of 16th century. Okay, so make sense now. Yung salitang make sense now. Copernican model makes sense now. Pero not necessarily na eksakto. Kasi nga, ang tawag natin yan is theory. Theory is still a theory until proven to be fact. Okay? So, under this, we have questions to be answered. Ano po? So, ilalagay ko na lang sa Google Classroom yung instead of question, ang ilalagay ko sa Google Classroom is 1.1. So, question for 1.1 would be, what is the contribution of Copernicus in the philosophy of science? Number 2, do you think, or 1.2, do you think thought experiments still useful in science in present time? And number 3, or 1.3, do you think church should intervene in scientific activities? Anyway, pag sinabi nating thought experiment, parang all Greek, walang experimentation, tapos hindi rin siya mag-i-invite para ng ibang tao para i-test yung experiment niya. So parang isipin lang niya kung paano magwo-work and then theory na agad yun. So 1.2 would be, do you think thought experiments still useful in science during this time? Okay, let us continue. We have number 2, Charles Darwin. Okay, what do we know about Charles Darwin? Hindi ko na masyadong hakabaan. What do we know about Charles Darwin? Anyway, you can have your research on these different people, even though diniscuss ko na. Kung hindi kayo satisfied dun sa discussion, pwede naman po kayo pwede tayong mag-research. Ano po? So, what do we know about Charles Darwin? He is famous for his theory of evolution. Therefore, he was called the father of the theory of evolution. Okay? He developed his interest in human history during the time as a student at Shrewsbury schools. Okay? But then again, he was observed to be mediocre and struggle in the study in medicine and ministry. Pag sinabi natin mediocre, parang okay, mas mababa pa sa average yung kanyang capacity during the time. Okay. So, bumagsak siya dun sa medicine tsaka sa ministry kung saan yun yung pinili ng father sa kanya para pag-aralan niya. Parang, okay, parang hindi naman masyadong matalino si Charles Darwin. No, what happened? So, Darwin's life changed when one of his professor recommended him to join a 5-year voyage through the HMS Beagle on the island of Galapagos. So, alam naman natin na si Darwin sumikat dun sa kanyang theory of evolution sa pag-aaral niya dito sa Galapagos Island. Okay? And Darwin published his book, The Origin of the Species, in 1589, considered to be one of the most important work in scientific literature. And Darwin's collected many significant materials in order to present his theories with overwhelming evidence. Napakadaming ebidensya na i-present ni Charles Darwin kanyang experiment. And his book, The Descent of Man, was impressive yet controversial. Bakit naging controversial yung libro niya na The Descent of Man? Okay? He introduced the idea of all organic life, including human beings, under the realms of evolutionary ideas or evolutionary thinking. This replaced the dominant views of the religious or biblical design that placed human being in the privileged position of having been created by God. Darwin's theory of evolution scientifically questions this view. Dito na pumasok yung creation versus evolution na naging nagkaroon ng hidwaan sa idea ng church at saka science. So, kay Charles Darwin nag-umpisa yung problema na yan. Darwin provided a different framework for doing scientific activities. It is a science marked by observation and experimentation. Kabaliktaran dun sa kay Nicholas Copernicus, which is thought experiment, yung usual na ginagamit ni Nicholas Copernicus. Kay Charles Darwin, we have observation and experimentation. Okay, medyo nagiging modern na yung ating sa science, observation and science. Under this, you are going to answer the following question. Number 1, what is Darwin's contribution to modern science? Okay, 2.2, how can Darwin's evolutionary theory influence the following fields of modern science or modern times in economy, agriculture, political science, and religion? Okay, let us continue. The third one, or the third scientist, would be Sigmund Freud. Okay, Sigmund Freud was famous for a famous figure in the field of psychology, towering literature figure, and a very talented communicator. That is according to Rosenfeld in 1980. His method is called the psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis is the scientific hypothesis he formulated form the essential fundamental version of his method. Ano ba yung method ni Sigmund Freud? For Freud, this psychoanalysis is a scientific way to study the human minds and neurotic illness. Okay. Neuro means yung sa utak. Okay po. His method was unorthodox. Ano yung unorthodox? Focusing on human sexuality and evil nature of man. You can also you can also try to search more about Sigmund Freud. And also, pagdating sa psychology ng sa professional education ninyo, pag-aaralan nyo pa rin si Sigmund Freud. Ano pa? Okay? So, you're gonna have to answer these questions. For Sigmund Freud. So, 3.1, how can you describe Freudian idea as a scientist? So, gonna have to search for Freudian ideas or his idea as a scientist. And if Freud is still alive, what do you think is the major change he would make to his uh would make major change he would make to his theory. Okay po. Okay. So anyway, so inilagay ko yung mga questions sa middle para panoorin niyo yung video kasi yung iba nag-skip lang tapos tumitingin na lang dun sa Google Classroom kung ano yung sasagutan nila. Okay? So I'll see you next meeting para dun sa sunod na objective natin. So we're going to discuss cradles of early science on the next meeting. Thank you and good evening.